Thank you so much for coming to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we're going to be focusing on Canto 3, Chapter 33, the activities of Kapila. We'll be reading from 9 to 12. Right? Just go around. Should I start? Should I read the first one? Okay, sure. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila, satisfied by the words of his mother, towards whom he was very affectionate, replied with gratitude.
The Personality of Godhead said, "My dear mother, the path of self-realization which I have already instructed you is very easy. You can execute this system without difficulty, and by following it, you shall very soon be liberated, even within your present body."
My dear mother, those who are actually transcendentalists certainly follow my instructions as I have given them to you. You may rest assured that if you traverse this path of self-realization perfectly, surely you shall be freed from fearful material contamination and shall ultimately reach me. Mother, persons who are not conversant with this method of devotional service certainly cannot get out of the cycle of birth and death.
Sri Maitreya said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila, after instructing his beloved mother, took permission from her and left his home, his mission having been fulfilled.
So let's go into text 12. Just wondering if somebody could give me, because this is the last chapter of this canto, right? So I'm just wondering if we can go around real quick, like a sentence each, or just give me a little bit of background, right? Like what has happened so far, what has led us to this point where now Kapila is going to leave, right? After what has he done? Right?
Kapila Dev has been having a nice heart-to-heart with his mama.
Okay, so he's been teaching her, right? Okay, so that sums it up. Text 12. Maitreya uvacha iti pradesha bhagavan satitam atmanogate swamatra brahma vadinya kapilo Maitreya Vacha, Maitreya said, indeed thus, Maitreya after instructing Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Satyam, Venerable, Tam, that, Atmana, self-realization, Satyam, Bhav, Swamatra, Brahmavadanya, self-realized, Kapila, Kapila, I'll read the translation together. Sri Maitreya said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, after instructing his beloved mother, took permission from her and left his home. Would somebody like to read the purport, please? Thanks, John.
The mission of the appearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Kapila was to distribute the transcendental knowledge of Sankhya philosophy, which is full of devotional service. Having imparted that knowledge to his mother and through his mother to the world, Kapila Dev had no more need to stay at home, so he took permission from his mother and left. Apparently, he left home for spiritual realization, although he had nothing to realize spiritually because he himself is the person to be spiritually realized. Therefore, this is an example set by the Supreme Personality of Godhead while acting like an ordinary human being so that others might learn from him. He could, of course, have stayed with his mother, but he indicated that there was no need to stay with the family. It is best to remain as a brahmachari, sannyasi, or vanaprastha and cultivate Krishna consciousness throughout one's whole life. Those who are unable to remain alone are given license to live in the household life with wife and children, not for sense gratification, but for cultivation of Krishna consciousness.
So, who's the newest person here? Like, who's the person? Yeah, who's the new guy in town today? Does everybody know? Do you all know what a brahmachari, sannyasi, and vanaprastha is? You know what that means? Okay, cool. So there's a system called, it's like a social system, which can be used for elevating your consciousness, right? So it's called varnashram dharma. So it takes into consideration your let's say your nature, like whether you're Brahminical or whether you work better with your hands, or whether you can do really well with agriculture or money, things like this. So this kind of helps you find your place given your karma, your nature, right? And then the ashram that you're in, it depends also on your inclination. Like if you can live like single, like he's saying here, it's really good for you to. It's really good to stay single. If you can stay single, then you can be a vanaprasth, you can be a sannyas or a brahmachari. So brahmacharis are like some of these boys that you see, or all of you actually, all of you are really brahmacharis, right? Because you've taken this time to study, stay single, focus on the cultivation of knowledge and evolving your consciousness during this time. So this is what this moment is brahmachari for all of you. Eventually, most of you, of us, will move on to the next step, which would be married life, or if we're very, which is very rare, you can go on straight to like be a sannyasi or something like that. So that's kind of what these things mean. And so when I was asked to speak about this, one of the things that that I was mentioned to focus on is this term acharya. Has anybody ever heard that before? Acharya. We say it in prayers, right? Can someone tell me what that means? Teaches by example. So a teacher, right? A teacher that not only just speaks, but also like teaches by their behavior, by how they interact, by their activities, right? So I'm going to read an excerpt from a lecture that Srila Prabhupada gave, where he describes where he gives the definition of acharya. And I think that's the best way for me to be able to glorify Srila Prabhupada, by using his own words. Because whatever I can say probably is going to fall short. So he gave this lecture in New York in December 16th, 1966. So he said, so similarly, you have to believe, you must have faith. And we see that many faithful great acharyas and devotees of the Lord, they achieve success by this faith. Why shall I not follow them? Therefore, the Vedic literature says that you have to follow in the footprints of the great acharyas. Acharya means great devotees who come to teach the people in general about God consciousness or Krishna consciousness. He is called acharya. He behaves in life how? To think of Krishna, and he teaches his students about that. He is called acharya. He knows the purport of the scriptures, and he behaves in his life and teaches his students in that way. That is called an acharya. So recently I came across a post in the community chat, which kind of, I found it very sweet. How do I say this? Around here we have an advertisement that actually tells us about this acharya. Right? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? It's brought down to 3 sentences. Actually, yeah, 3 phrases. It's really sweet. It's on campus. Oh. It's on a board.
Give it, live it, get it.
Okay, how does it start? Get it, live it, give it. So that right there, actually in Krishna House, one of our core values is to teach by example, is acharya, right? And we promote this, right? We put it on the campus for everyone to see. Get it, live it, give it. That's an acharya. Because the acharyas before us also got it, lived it, and give it. And they follow in succession, right? So today's focus of the class is going to be on this acharya. And Krishna himself is an acharya because he teaches us by example, right? We see here what he's done with his conversation with his mother, right? And in his behavior, now we see the verse says that, okay, after having instructed his mother, he took permission from her. And then he was like, he's Krishna. Krishna doesn't have to ask for permission from anybody. He's the supreme controller, supreme enjoyer. He runs this, you know? It's whatever he wants, he can do. He doesn't need to ask for permission for anything. But what does he do? He teaches us by his example. By his behavior, we can learn, right? So this preparing for this class has been really sweet because for some reason I was inspired to just go into the Krishna book. Because that's where a lot of Krishna's pastimes are. We can learn from his behavior there to follow in his footprints. So I took examples from the Krishna book in which Krishna shows us his behavior as a grihasta, as a householder, as a brahmachari, and then as a sannyasi. Right? It's really sweet. So it starts with this one personality who I will speak about because he's, in a way, he is an acharya that can inspire us very much. And his name is Narada Muni. So Narada Muni is known as a transcendental spaceman who goes around inspiring other souls to achieve what he has achieved, which is the perfection of his existence. But we'll go further into that in a minute. So Narada Muni visits Krishna's palaces when he's out in Dwarka. And Krishna in Dwarka, so he's in Vrindavan when he's younger, and then when he goes to do his like kingly and princely duties, he's like out in a different city. Right? So he's got 16,000 wives and he's got 16,000 palaces, and he's at every single one of those palaces, Narada Muni comes to visit, and in every one of those palaces, he sees different activities. So we're gonna hear about those activities, and those activities are gonna exemplify what the householder life should be like, what we should aspire to follow, not imitate, but follow. So this is an excerpt from that chapter where Narada Muni visits the palaces. That's chapter 69 from the Krishna book. So here it goes. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, worshipped even by Narada Muni. Yet as soon as Krishna saw Narada enter the palace, he got down immediately from Rukmini's bedstead and stood up to honor him. Lord Krishna is the teacher of the world, and in order to instruct everybody how to respect a saintly person like Narada, he bowed down, touching his helmet to the ground. Not only did Krishna bow down, but he also touched the feet of Narada, and with folded hands requested him to sit on his chair. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, worshipped by all devotees. Lord Krishna in Dwarka enjoyed pastimes of a perfect human being. Therefore, he washed the feet of the sage Narada and took the water in his head. Narada did not object, knowing well that the Lord did so to teach everybody to respect saintly persons. So we see, like, Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of everything. It is humble. He receives a saintly person and he shows us how to receive a saintly person. You know, sometimes I have this experience where I just want to give off the image of like, like being proper. So like I may be like taking a nap or something in my room, and then a saintly person, a devotee, comes to knock at the door. And I have them outside waiting for like 15 minutes while like I pick up my sleeping bag, I mop the floor, I brush my teeth, fix my hair, like stick it up because I've been taking a nap, and then light some incense before I open the door. And it's kind of a show. But Narada Muni just showed up like unannounced and on the spot. Krishna was ready. He's just like prepared to do the right thing, to show us in this way. So we see that what he does is, okay, a saintly person comes in and he treats them very nicely, like by his actions, right? He welcomes them very nicely. Now we're going to see another thing that he does. He says, welcoming him with sweet nectarian words. So he speaks very nicely to him too. Not only does he receive him in this way, but he speaks to him very nicely, very sweet words that can be like drank like nectar by the saintly person. So yeah, Narada Muni is possessing all knowledge. Oh, he called him Bhagavan. He like really like praised him. Like we call each other Prabhu, right? Like Prabhu, like somebody who's a great person. So like this, these are the sweet words that he used. So we're gonna see a little bit more of his different activities. Now we saw a little bit of how he receives a saintly person, but we're gonna see other really cool things that he does. But I want to make reference to Bhagavad Gita 6:17, where Krishna himself says that he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all the material pains by practicing the yoga systems. So one thing that is really interesting that he mentions here is recreation, right? And it's important that we also incorporate that into our lives, because if not, then we become frustrated because it's a necessity. And if we avoid that and just try to become kind of like really strict, it may take away from that playfulness, right? It may take away because we'll become frustrated. And when we become frustrated, it comes out of different ways. And so it's good for us to be controlled in all these different ways. Sleeping, eating, it affects our consciousness. So just keep in mind, recreation is also very good, you know? So we're going to see what Krishna does. So he went from, Narada Muni went from palace to palace. So now he goes to another palace. And he found Krishna feeding brahmanas after performing ritualistic yagyas. In another place, Narada found Krishna silently chanting the Gayatri mantra. And in a third, he found him practicing fighting with a sword and a shield. In some palaces, Krishna was found riding on horses, elephants, or chariots and wandering hither and thither. Elsewhere, he was found lying down on his bedstead taking rest. And somewhere else, he was found sitting in his chair, being praised by the prayers of his different devotees. In other palaces, he was found consulting with ministers like Uddhava on important matters of business. In one palace, he was found surrounded by many young society girls enjoying in a swimming pool. In another palace, he was found giving well-decorated cows in charity to the brahmanas. And in another palace, he was found hearing the narrations of the Puranas and of histories such as Mahabharata, which are supplementary literatures for the disseminating Vedic knowledge to common people by narrating important instances in the history of the universe. Somewhere, Lord Krishna was found enjoying the company of a particular wife by exchanging joking words with her. Somewhere, he was found engaged with his wife in religious ritualistic functions. Since it is necessary for householders to increase their financial assets for various expenditures, Krishna was found somewhere engaged in matters of economic development. Somewhere else, he was found enjoying family life according to the regulative principles of the Shastras. So here we see that at the end of this purport, if you can go back up, Srila Prabhupada at the very last line says that those who are given the license to live in a household life with a wife and children, that is not for sense gratification, but is for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So we see Krishna's activities are all very much spiritual, even his recreation, right? The recreation here is presented as abiding by religious principles, right? So as long as we stay within that frame, we'll be advancing in Krishna consciousness. It's not that we need to live separate lives. It's not that I go enjoy recreation away from Krishna, and then in the morning at 6 a.m. I'm with Krishna, and then the rest of the day at 3 p.m. I do something else. It's like, no, everything that we do, even like wrestling, like he was saying here, Srila Prabhupada was saying here that these guys are that Krishna was fighting with swords, like preparing, like training for battle and stuff like this, right? So even that falls within the realm of Krishna consciousness, of Krishna conscious activities, right? So we don't have to try to live separate lives. We just have to integrate, right? So this is the example that he gives us in householder lives. So I want to read a little more, because then Narada Muni goes to this one palace, and he sees a garden that's really beautiful with like the parijata flower, which is brought directly from the spiritual world, right? And there's so many flowers, there's honeybees, there's fruits. It's so amazing. There's ponds with fish in them, like it's really beautiful. And one thing I thought about when I was reading that is that, have you guys ever been to Madhava Prabhu's house? He's got like this beautiful garden, and now he's turned it into a retreat. And he's got all these flowers and tulsi plants, and all of that in his home is for the pleasure of his shilas, of his deities. right? Like in this garden, all of this is for Krishna's pleasure. And what I thought about was that people buy homes and they make these great kind of arrangements and stuff just for their enjoyment, right? But it's a source of frustration for them. Because what happens is that the neighbor gets jealous and then he's like, I'm gonna build a bigger deck. And then he sees that. And then, oh, you're redoing your driveway? And people, the companies capitalize on that. When they're doing somebody's driveway, so many other neighbors like start to find out, like, oh, well, how much does it cost? And then they get work for the whole summer. Like, oh, he redid it? How much? How much? Then they start giving discounted prices because everybody's like always in competition. Like, I don't know if you guys ever heard, like, the grass is greener on the other side. Like, you always want to like keep up with the, what is it? Keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, oh, he got the 2020 Corolla. Next year, I'm gonna get the 2021 Corolla. You'll see. And sometimes you see in the yards, like the same car, different color, or just a newer year. It's just like they all influence each other, and it's a source of like conflict, right? But as devotees, right, in a community, everything that we do is not for our own sense gratification, but for the gratification of Krishna's senses. So there's no conflict. We all work together. Somebody might sing kirtan this way, somebody might sing it this way, and we're not like, well, let's go sing kirtan over here because we sing it this way, and they sing kirtan over there like this, and then everybody's kind of separate. No, we all come together and encourage everybody, right? That's the idea. That's what the spiritual world is about. It's about everybody working together to serve Krishna's senses, and in return, he gives pleasure to our senses. So anyway, I just went, oh, Shruti's another person who I thought about when I heard the description of these gardens. Shruti's got like 8 bushes of gardenias. Like you walk in front of his house and it's just so fragrant. And like, who are those for? They're for Krishna. They're for Krishna. He's had the center of his living room is a giant bookcase with an altar. Right? And what are those flowers for? For the pleasure of Krishna. Somebody walks by, they're gonna smell that, and because Shruti keeps his windows open, maybe you get darshan of Krishna. Another person that I've seen with this mood of kind of building this palace for the deities in their home is Kalakanta Prabhu. He's got all these trees, these fruit trees, and this veggie garden. And it's not all just for his enjoyment because he's gonna enjoy it ultimately after Krishna has it, right? So it's all just for Krishna. The cows that are there, they're protected for Krishna's pleasure. Same thing with Adipartha Prabhu's house. If anybody's been, he's got tons of cows and he's got milk and yogurt and all these things. And what is it for? The central thing is serving deities, serving Krishna. So these are I give examples of like Krishna exemplifying the householder life, but also of how devotees show us too, how they're following that example. So they're also acharyas because they're teaching us by their example. So we just have to follow in those footsteps. That's it. Everything else is taken care of. So the brahmacharya, how much time? The brahmacharya lifestyle. Krishna, there's this really, really sweet pastime. My goodness, I recommend everybody in this room and everybody listening and watching to give this a shot. It's chapter 80 of the Krishna book. The title of the chapter is The Meeting of Lord Krishna with Sudama Brahma. Can somebody tell me the pastime? Does anybody know a little bit of the pastime? No? Okay. So basically, Lord Krishna, at one point in his life, was a brahmachari. Can you pull up the picture? Maybe if you can find it, him as a little brahmachari. It's so sweet. They're like sitting on the grass. And again, Krishna, he is the source of everything. He doesn't need a guru. He is the guru, right? But why does he take a guru? To teach us by example, to show us that he himself, when he was here, he took this up. Right? So while you look at the picture, I'm gonna start just reading another excerpt from. No, that's not it. Oh, the first one on the left. Yeah. Look at how sweet.
He shaved his head.
The little brahmachari. Yeah. He's so cute. And he's there with his guru, Sandipani Muni.
Balaram brahmachari too.
I think that's Sudama, right? Or is it Balaram?
This one,
It's Balaram. Okay. That's really sweet. So this is what I took out from this, and I'm going to read it to you. If a man is sufficiently educated in student life under the guidance of a proper teacher, his life becomes successful in the future. That's the investment that you all are making right now. And it's difficult. It's sometimes it can be very uncomfortable. It's stressful, right? But this is the investment. Like we do this with university, right? Like university is very difficult. It's very stressful. But then at the end, it gives us hope for success, right? In this case, we're hearing that the life will be successful if we take time in our lives to study under the guidance of a teacher, right? And the teacher's not just one. In the morning prayer, in the Mangalacharna, these prayers that we say before classes and stuff, before in the afternoon classes when we read it, Vandeham Shri Guru, right? Right? It's saying that it's more than one. So it's not that, oh, well, because right now I haven't taken shelter of one spiritual master, I don't have a spiritual master. No, we have many spiritual masters. We have all the teachers that we have here, right? Our ashram leaders, Shruti, Rasiba, Advaita, all these guides that we have. They're all gurus. Right? Gopal, yeah, for sure. So we are all living this right now. So then I'll go on. He can very easily cross over the ocean of nescience, and he is not subject to the influence of the illusory energy. My dear friend, everyone should consider his father to be his first teacher, because by the mercy of one's father, one gets this body. The father is therefore the natural spiritual master. That's not always the case in Kali Yuga. Right? Sometimes the father isn't. You get lessons from that as well, right? But still. Our next spiritual master is he who initiates us into transcendental knowledge, and he is to be worshipped as much as I am. The spiritual master may be more than one. The spiritual master who instructs the disciple about spiritual matters is called the Shiksha Guru, and the spiritual master who initiates the disciple is called the Diksha Guru. Both of them are my representatives. This is Krishna talking to Sudama Brahma. There may be many spiritual masters who instruct, but the initiator spiritual master is one. A human being who takes advantage of these spiritual masters and receiving proper knowledge from them crosses the ocean of material existence to be understood as having properly utilized this human form of life. He has practical knowledge that the ultimate interest of life, which is to be gained only in this human form, is to achieve spiritual perfection and thus to be transferred back home, back to Godhead. So now Krishna is going to tell him about a time. He's going to remind Sudama Brahmana about a time where they were brahmacharis, and this is what they did. It's really sweet. Krishna continued to talk with Sudama, with his Brahmana friend. My dear friend, I think you remember our activities during the days when we were living as students. That's all of us, as students. You may remember that once we went to collect fuel from the forest on the order of our guru's wife. Shruti, do you send out the kids to get the firewood? Just kidding. While collecting the dried wood, we entered the dense forest and by chance became lost. There was an unexpected dust storm, and then clouds and lightning in the sky and the explosive sounds, and with the clouds, lightning in the sky and the explosive sound of thunder. Then sunset came, and we were lost in the dark jungle. After this, there was a severe rainfall. The whole ground was overflooded. Sorry. font is very small, so it's very difficult. Oh, okay. It became overflowed with water. We could not trace the way back to our Guru's ashram. You may remember the heavy rainfall. It was not actually rainfall, but some sort of devastation. On account of the dust storm and the heavy rain, we began to feel greatly pained. In whichever direction we turned, we were bewildered. In that distressed condition, we took each other's hand and tried to find our way out. We passed the whole night in this way. In the early morning, when our absence became known to our Guru, he sent his other disciples to search for us. He also came with them, and when they reached us in the jungle, they found us very distressed. With great compassion, our Guru Dev said, "My dear boys, it is very wonderful that you have suffered so much trouble for me. Everyone likes to take care of his body as the first consideration. But you are so good and faithful to your Guru that without caring about your bodily comforts, you have taken so much trouble for me. I am glad to see that bona fide students like you will undergo any kind of trouble for the satisfaction of the spiritual master. That is the way for a bona fide disciple to become free from this debt to the spiritual master. It is the duty of the disciple to dedicate his life to the service of the spiritual master. My dear best of the twice born, or Brahman, I am greatly pleased by your acts, and I bless you. May all your desires and ambitions be fulfilled. May the understanding of the Vedas, which you have learned from me, always continue to remain within your memory, so that every moment you can remember the teachings of the Vedas and quote their instructions without difficulty. Thus, you will never be disappointed in this life or the next. My dear friend," this is Krishna saying, "My dear friend, you may remember that many such incidents occurred while we were in the ashram of our spiritual master. Both of us can realize that without the blessings of the spiritual master, no one can be happy." And we see that in the morning prayer, right? The last prayer, right? It goes, "Yasya prasada, bhagava prasada, yasya prasada, nagatapitopi," right? It's, what is that second line? It says, if you, right, so without the grace of the spiritual master, then there's no benedictions, there's no blessings. So through pleasing the spiritual master is that we get all benedictions. And this is what he's saying now. So then the Brahmana replied, my dear Krishna, you're the Supreme Lord and the Supreme Spiritual Master of everyone. And since I was fortunate enough to live with you in the house of our Guru, I think that I have nothing more to do in the matter of prescribed Vedic duties." Anyway, so I'll stop there with this story. But we see like that Krishna is teaching us how to be a disciple, right? Like he's teaching us what it means to be a proper disciple, how to please our Guru, right? Putting yourself on the line to give back for everything that the spiritual master is giving. Because the spiritual master is giving everything. Everything. Like Krishna is everything. We're getting that by pleasing the spiritual master. So I thought that was a really sweet story to share. So I have a few minutes. So I just wanted to go into like Narada Muni really quickly. Because Narada Muni is, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's like certain categories. Like Krishna in his incarnations, he's Vishnu Tattva. He's like a certain category, right? And we are not Krishna category. We're Jiva category. We're tiny. We're specks. And Krishna is great. So we don't become Krishna. Right? We remain tiny specks that become fulfilled by engaging in relationship with Krishna. So that's called Jiva Tattva. That's us. Jiva Tattva. And then there's Vishnu Tattva. Right? Like Krishna. And then there's us. Parts and parcels of Krishna. So Narada Muni is Jiva Tattva. He is like us. Right? And Narada Muni, when he was a little boy, his mom was milking a cow and she got bit by a serpent. She got bit by a snake. And as a little boy, he lost his mom. And that's very traumatic. Like, we're also like Jiva Tattva, and we experience our own trauma. Right? Maybe not capital T, maybe lowercase t, but it's still shapes our consciousness in a certain way. We're very young, the neural pathways start being formed, and belief systems, and all these things start being formed by these traumatic events, right? So what did he do when that happened? He reflected. He went out into the forest and reflected. What do when we experience trauma? We have to reflect. We have to give ourselves time to reflect on our behaviors, on our impulses, on how we react, on how we're affected, right? So by reflecting, we can get a picture as to why things are the way they are now for us, right? And that itself is part of the process of healing these traumas. So Narada Muni is so cool that he goes around inspiring people with his instrument, with the Sari Gama Pada Nisa. He goes around and he gives us the example, and he teaches us that we can also worship Krishna by these same sounds, right? And we use them on the harmonium, we use them when we're chanting kirtan, right? And that's all Narada Muni does. He chants kirtan and inspires people to chant kirtan. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, I love a good like ruins to riches story. Like 50 Cent was like somebody who I looked up to because he came from nothing and he got rich or died trying, right? It's always really inspiring. Jay-Z, like out the slums, multimillionaire, like Scarf, yeah, yeah. It's true. It's true. These are like kind of like I guess contemporary examples, right? But I don't know. Can somebody think of like the president of India? He's known like in India as like somebody who was like nothing, and now he's like the president. You know, like so these stories are very inspiring, right? So now think of us the speck, the jiva, the really tiny jiva. That's like what is the measurement that's given in the Gita? Like the size? Okay, let's go with that, right? That's tiny, right? We're so tiny, right? And now imagine that speck, us little, like in an ocean of gunk and dust and fog, in the gutters of the material existence, like just so much like fog and dirt, right? And here comes Narada Muni, right? And he inspires us to chant. So Harinam is the way to get out of all of that and go back to Godhead, right? So what better way to glorify the mercy of Lord Chaitanya by giving us this holy name than to chant Harinam all the way back to Godhead? I don't think there's a better, more inspirational ruins to riches story than the Jiva, who's so tiny, being so stuck in so much mud, going back to Goloka Vrindavan and serving Krishna, like in the spiritual world, where like you can do whatever service you want. You can literally serve Krishna however you want. You're not limited by this body. Like if we want to be inspired by some of these like these examples that we gave, right? Most of them just die in the end. Like all the riches are just done like in this life. You know, they don't take those riches with them. But we have the opportunity to gain the kingdom, to gain everything. And it doesn't go away. Because in spiritual progress, it's like a ratchet. Are you guys familiar with tools, ratchets? Like you can click a certain direction, but once the bolt is tight, you can't go the other way. So that means that you can advance to a certain degree, and then you hit a checkpoint, like in video games. In video games, when you hit a certain checkpoint, if you die, you don't go back to the beginning. You start at that checkpoint where you're like you take more risks, right? Because you're like, okay, I don't have to start the whole game over. But imagine there was no checkpoints. You would take no risks because you don't want to have to start all the way from the beginning, right? So this is the risk that Krishna is taking for a spiritual master. He's fearless because he knows that Krishna tells us in the Gita that no advancement that you make goes back to zero. You may stop advancing, but when you take it up again, if you stopped at 70, you start back up at 71%. So I'll stop there glorifying Narada Muni because he's somebody who we can really look up to. He's basically showing us that we can get there. we can become liberated souls. We're conditioned right now, right? And he's Jiva Tattva and we're Jiva Tattva. So that means that we have the opportunity, we have the potential to really get there and just go around the way Srila Prabhupada did. Go around agitating people's minds. You chant Hare Krishna. You chant Hare Krishna. You chant Hare Krishna. And like this, millions of people all over the world are given that opportunity to do that because of that kindness, because of that inspiration that he received from his acharyas. So I'll wrap it up by saying that we are all responsible walking in the footsteps of being an acharya. It doesn't mean that we have to tell people what to do, because often people don't remember what we say. They just remember how we make them feel. They might like how we are as people, right? And that might inspire them. I can sit here and talk for an hour, and I may not even remember what I said, and somebody else may not remember what I said. But if they felt like, hey, I like that person, like, what does he do to be like that? Then that has influence, right? And that's how we teach by example. So the main thing that we can do before trying to force somebody or trying to persuade them to chant Hare Krishna is for us to chant Hare Krishna. Once we can chant it, we may not even have to tell somebody the words chant Hare Krishna. They may ask you, what is your secret? Why are you so happy? What are you doing? How are you like this? And then you just say, chant Hare Krishna. Right? They invite you into that. So I'll stop there and I'll take any questions or any comments. People are still awake. We'll stop there. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, there was a couple of things that you talked about that I was reflecting on this morning during Japa, and one of them was I really like how Krishna, he's able to make himself be in different places at one time. That way he can cover all the activities he needs to. I've always wished that I could have 4 different versions of me just to be in different locations with my family, one for family, one for business, one for spiritual life, one for, traveling, but that's
one for economic development.
Yeah, one for economic development, exactly. But yeah, that's so wonderful to see he's engaged in so many different things, and yeah, that they can all be dovetailed into spiritual life. It's not just that he's sitting on a leopard skin blanket out in the woods chanting next to a river and not moving. That's it. I think some people really do believe that's what it means to meditate, but that is a process too. Okay, but anyway, then I was thinking this morning during job, I was getting really happy because I was like, next time I go back to my hometown skate park, I would want to bring some Krishna lunch and some books and pass it out to the homies. And I think they really like it, and I was just getting excited and thinking that I'd like to share Krishna consciousness. And it's so simple to share it. We can just share it by giving people macaroni and cheese, and show them, hey, I got some cool books. If you want, you can have one,
You can be the traveling spaceman on a skateboard. Like in Back to the Future, they get a hoverboard. Yeah. You mentioned something about the different processes of yoga that struck a chord. Krishna, psychology comes from Krishna. Why do you think that he creates karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, jnana yoga? All of these because it has to do with the psychology of every conditioned soul, right? So he meets them at where they're at. He gives them an opportunity. Like, if this is what's attractive to you, then join here. If this is what's attractive to you, then do this. But by following it properly, as it's prescribed, each one of those methods, not through some speculation, not through some kind of whatever philosophy I want to make for myself, but if they're following yoga, those different systems of yoga, pranayama, I think you do pranayama, right? Yeah, and it's got scriptures that give you the prescription of how to do it, right? So whatever yoga it is that you're into, you try that, eventually what it's gonna do, it's gonna bring you up to the step on the ladder of yoga of bhakti. Because it's not separate from bhakti, it's just a stepping stone on the way to bhakti. And if in this lifetime, all we can do is a different kind of yoga, right? Like maybe meditating in silence, right? If they're following the prescriptions of that system, then eventually they'll get to the point where they can chant Hare Krishna, right? Right now, it's just one life. This is one life, right? It's just one speck in eternity. It's a dot in eternity, in the existence of the jiva, right? It's just one dot. So again, because the progress doesn't go away, if he stops, if someone picks up that progress and they leave their body from taking on that progress, when they take up yoga again, it's not like they're going to start from zero. However much their consciousness has elevated, they're going to pick up from there. Ultimately, the destination is back home, back to Godhead. So everybody here is destined to go back to Godhead. Otherwise, we're just driving in circles in the circle of samsara. We can't even park. We're just moving, constantly just cycling. But the way to get out and park the vehicle in Goloka Vrindavan is there. It's with Krishna. It's in the spiritual world. That's how we get out. Otherwise, we're still in the cycle, right? Because eventually, whatever perfections or siddhis we get from these other yogas, if they're not in relationship with Krishna, right? Eventually, they'll have to come back down. You hear that from people that get liberation to the spiritual sky. Eventually, they have to come back down. It's while they're there, it's eternal, but they come back down until they make it all the way back home, back to God, like back home where you can stay. You see, so I just wanted to address that point. Different yogas and people's different psychology and how they can gravitate towards different systems, and it's Krishna making it for us. So in one way, whether it's direct or indirect, they're elevating to Krishna consciousness. They're getting away from me consciousness to, okay, there's something else, but that's just stepping stones on the way to get back to the Krishna consciousness. Is that okay? Any other questions? Ready? How's Baltimore? Okay. Baltimore's awesome. It's really sweet. It's really sweet. We have a preaching program there going on Tuesdays called Taco Tuesday. People call me the Taco Acharya. I humbly accept. It's just the program that I learned to run here. So then I just took it somewhere else. And yeah, it's really sweet. We get a few people that come regularly. Solid 5 or 6 people that come Tuesday. Yeah, it's sweet. So we should end there because I don't think anybody has any more questions. Thank you very much. Shiva Bhagavatam ki jai.